GitHub. So it's a little bit about GitHub, a little bit about planning, a couple other things. We're going to talk some about N8N, mainly about how everything is connected. So let me get my lovely moderators here promoted. So let me promote Ms. Coach Kara. I am so excited to see Coach Kara here in just shy of 3 days. We are going to be attending the POD event in Clearwater, Florida, right on the coast, the Gulf Coast. I'm super, super excited. So just getting them promoted here. Just bear with me a second. We got the QA started. Do, 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 do. Come on. All right, panelists. Danny is a panelist. Thank you, Ms. Danny Thompson. Make co-host. And let me try re-promoting Kara. I know, right, Francisco, Jacksonville, Florida. I think something should happen in Pensacola, Florida, to be honest with you. That's my old stomping ground is Pensacola, Florida. I think something needs to happen in that area because I love the Destin. I love that upper inner Gulf Coast area. I lived in Gulf Coast, Pensacola, Florida for a couple of years while I was in the Marine Corps. And it was an absolute blast. So definitely something that I really, truly enjoyed. We'll give it just a couple more minutes here. We're getting people joined in, getting everyone situated. So who here, drop a 1 in the chat if you've been testing out N8N. If you have been testing out N8N, drop a 1 in the chat. All right, we got a couple people testing out N8N. That's amazing. So today we're going to talk a little bit about N8N, a little bit about GitHub. We're going to do some light wireframing and scenario drawing. So what I want everyone to do is in your head, visualize what kind of automations make sense to you, right? So what sorts of automations do you think you should be creating? And when you think about the automations that you create, think about repetitive tasks. So what I always told my clients when I own my creative agency was it's really important to kind of document what you do every day that you hate. And that can be everything from calling clients, uh, conditional type A/B decisions that come up constantly. That's a really good way to look at it. That's something that you can use AI for, Jonathan. That's a really good idea. Everybody drop some ideas in the chat about things that you wish that you could automate. And unfortunately, laundry and dishes don't count as things you can automate. As much as I wish that laundry and dishes were things you could automate, they are not things you can automate. Laundry, dishes, and walking your dog are 3 things that are just not automatable yet. Now, they do make this really cool laundry robot that I saw where all you do, and my friend actually has one. My friend Matt has one, and Matt Jones. And all you do is you just put your shirt inside the machine, right? So you just grab your shirt off the floor, you just throw your shirt inside the machine, and it automatically stretches, presses, and washes the individual clothing item that you are about to wear. So it's just-in-time laundry system is what he calls it. And it's pretty impressive. But it still can't pick it up off the floor yet, unfortunately. So it can't grab it out of the basket, can't pick it up off the floor. Looks like Eric said that he just ordered a pair of the G2 glasses. I love them, absolutely love them. You can kind of see here, if I tap my ring, you can see the green changing in my lenses. That is my heads up display showing up inside my glasses. I really enjoy them. I think that they are a very powerful tool for productivity and a variety of other things. I actually just got admitted to the Even Realities dev beta team. So I'll be developing applications for the glasses, which is super exciting. I've already got a couple ideas, have Cursor, already building out my first app, which ironically is to use Cursor. So my first app is going to be designed for building out a system to be able to view the cursor view pane inside of my glasses. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, again, I asked everyone to come up with some ideas, and I'm going to go to Draw.io, which is a really awesome free drawing program. And I'm going to share my screen. Drawio is like Lucid Chart. It's like a variety of other platforms, but Drawio is where I start my automations. So let's think of some things that we want to automate. And the first thing that I want to automate is I have a lovable website, right? So what I'm going to do is I am going to look at the different options that I have here, and I see that I have a variety of different arrows and flowchart items and decision trees and all sorts of stuff, right? Annotations, databases, decisions, delays, direct data. So there's all sorts of things here that we can use for our drawing. But what I want to do is talk about how I visualize automations, right? So whenever I get to a point where I need to build something in N8N, or I need to build something in Lovable, or I need to build something in high level even, the first thing I do is I diagram it out. So I was talking to my friend Sean McGinnis earlier about automations that he was building, and I looked at his automation, and it was like huge. I mean, gigantic. It had like 5 triggers and probably 25 nodes. And I was like, dude, you got to break up this automation. Like, you really got to make this a smaller sequence, something a little bit more reasonable and digestible. And he was like, well, how do I do that? And I was like, well, first, you got to map it out, right? Because mapping is the most important. Michael Pacito and I teach this every Thursday morning. We had a great call about this yesterday with Jim Perkerson. But what we teach is that it's so absolutely important that you diagram out what you want to have happen. So the first thing we have is a person, right? And this person is going to interact with our lovable website. So I am going to grab a lovable website representation and drop that up here in the chat. And this is my website. Okay. And maybe this is not the best one to use. So we'll use this one instead. There we go. This is my lovable website. So I'm going to call this, let me remember how to edit the interior. Come on. Lovable website. All right. And what I have is this person, right, interacting with this lovable website. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag 2 different items, or drag an item over here and say this actor, this person, so I'm going to call this customer, interacts with my lovable website. My lovable website is going to be Aldi or Legendary Academy. And they're going to interact with the Legendary Academy lovable website. Now, what happens when they interact with the Legendary Academy level website? Well, I need to somehow get from here into high level, right? But I need to know exactly what happens during the process between getting there and high level. So what do I do when I'm thinking about different things that we have? Again, you have all these different blocks inside of our flow chart. So what happens when the customer submits the information? So I'm going to rewrite this. Customer submits information submits information to Lovable website, such as contact data. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to grab a database icon because I need to store that information somewhere, right? So I'm going to grab that database icon. And what I'm going to do is drag the database icon over, or drag the Lovable website over to the database icon. And we're going to call this Supabase. All right, now we have the customer submits the information. It goes to the Legendary Academy level website, whoops, to Supabase. From Supabase, we need to store the information in Supabase, and we need to somehow, at some point, right, end up at, let's look for a termination. That's collate data, display, manual input, update reference, preparation, start, transfer, where's end? Store data, process. Can never remember which one of these I want to use. In the grand scheme of things, it probably doesn't actually matter which one you use. So I'm just going to grab another one, and I'm going to call this end card over here. I'm going to drag this down. I'm going to mark this red. I'm going to call this high level. Okay. So now I have to get from the Lovable website to the Legendary Academy website. So the customer submits the information. I have to get to the Legendary Academy level website, over into Supabase, and now I have to get into high level. So what do I need to happen between this? Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open my favorite friend, chatgpt.com, and I'm going to snap a photo of this. And what I'm going to do is snap a photo just like this. I'm going to copy this and say, hey, ChatGPT, I have a lovable website where a customer submits information on a contact form, and that contact form populates the Supabase database. And ultimately, I need it to end up in high level, but I'm not sure what steps I need to have happen between, or what functions should happen that ultimately create the entry inside of my high level CRM. Can you help me? So it's really important to note that I have a very awesome diagram that's incomplete, right? So I've got my high level information over here, my high level CRM. I've got my Supabase database, my level website, my customer submitting information, but I've got no idea what goes in these blocks over here. So all I have to do is very simply ask ChatGPT, how do I create this? So what I'm going to do is just listen to this information. So it says I've got level form to Supabase. So customer submits form, goes into Supabase, recommended fields in the table, gives you an outbox pattern so you can retry safely. I'm going to trigger a sync event when a row is created inside of Supabase using a Supabase database webhook, right? So I take this, I configure a Supabase database webhook. So I need to add a Supabase database webhook in here. Okay, so I'm going to say, let's look for an action card. So I'm going to put a transfer little icon right here, and I'm going to mark this as yellow. And I'm going to drag Supabase down to this transfer and say Supabase webhook to high level from database. All right, now I need to look back at ChatGPT and what does it say? Okay, I can either do that or create a Supabase edge function we're not going to get into edge functions right now. Um, what we want is to check out the middleware piece. So we can use N8N, or we can use a node or express endpoint. What I want is the N8N node to understand. So we're going to use this N8N right here. But actually, in the grand scheme of things, we don't even need N8N in this case, but I'm going to go ahead and include it just in case. So I'm going to put in a process right in here. So we got our start, preparation, predefined process, parallel mode. Let's do a process right here. So I'm going to put in a process, and we're going to call this N8N. Now I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and I'm actually going to kill this arrow right here because we want this Supabase webhook to come into N8N. And that Supabase webhook is going to go into N8N. And ultimately, we need to connect N8N to high level, right? So we can make this a little bit more legible by coming down here, just moving some different items around so it makes a little bit more sense from a visual standpoint and keeps it all on one page. The next thing I need to do is understand what goes inside the N8N node, right? So I'm going to look here, and we have all these different functions. And all I'm going to say is write me an N8N workflow that takes an inbound webhook from Supabase database and pushes it to high level using an API call. And what's going to happen next is ChatGPT is actually going to give me the copy and paste information that I need to put in N8N. So very easy to use. And all we did was ask ChatGPT to write out a scenario for us in N8N. So we didn't actually need to write anything in N8N ourselves. We're just going to have ChatGPT do it for us. And you can have Claude Code, Cursor, any of your preferred AI development systems, Claude proper, any of those different systems are going to be able to create those N8N workflows for you. So very easy to do. You can see here it's almost done. So let's just wait for it to finish up. We're just waiting, just waiting. And sometimes the build's a little bit more complicated than you need. But to be honest with you, most of the time, ChatGPT and Claude give you a really good starting point, and then you can kind of consolidate from there. So what this is doing is this is creating these different nodes for us and everything else that we need to drop directly into N8N. So does that make sense to everyone so far about what we're doing in terms of being able to go inside of Drawio and create that N8N function? Excellent. Um, what I really like to see is good documentation, and I always save this. So I'm going to save this as, let's call this lovable website to high level. And I'm going to rename this. And this is going to give us N8N scenario developed by ChatGPT. All right. So we can save this, which I don't want to save this in Google Drive. I'm going to go ahead and save this locally. So I'm going to download this. And now I have my Drawio diagram. I also now have a completed N8N node right here that I can drop directly in N8N. And guess what? The cool part is it's as simple as hitting this copy button, going to N8N, and hitting paste. That's it. You don't even have to download anything. You don't have to really make any changes whatsoever. It's really simply just copy and paste. Now, let's say that, and kind of switching gears here, let's say that I have this draw-yo diagram and I have this end-to-end scenario. And what I need to do is I need to save this somewhere that I can easily access and use. Who here from our previous chats and sessions is familiar with GitHub? Anybody drop a, yep, you got a couple people familiar with GitHub so far. All right. So there was this concept back in the day called the Svalbard Seed Vault, right? Still exists nowadays, and there's actually many of them. It's not just located in Svalbard, Sweden anymore. Um, but there are many of them around the world. There are seed vaults around the world. And the goal was to create an immutable backup of all genetic material in the event a continent or large region was wiped out. And the purpose was, let's say that, gosh forbid, an asteroid or aliens come and all of a sudden they wipe out the United States. No more United States. No more North America. All of Canada, all of United States. We're all just, California falls off the edge and the North America just gets decimated, like in that End of the World video from E-Bomb's World. I don't know if you remember that. Drop a two in the chat if you remember End of the World by E-Bomb's World. It was a pretty funny video. But anyways, I digress to say that the yeah, exactly. We go to a warmer place and keep building SAS. But I'm lit tired. Oh man, I haven't seen that video in forever. I'm gonna have to send that out to everybody in the community because it's really funny. Um, I love the fact that you guys actually get that reference. Most of the time when I make that joke, nobody gets the reference I'm making. So definitely awesome that you guys get that reference. But anyways, um, the whole principle was that in the event a catastrophic event happens or a catastrophic situation happens, that we're able to restore and repopulate the seeds and animals from around the world. So they have genetic material stored from all over the continent and all of these seed vaults. And GitHub is basically the seed vault for code. So GitHub's entire purpose is to create and maintain all of the code from around the world. Okay. So what you do in GitHub is you go to github.com, and with github.com, if you just another hour. Okay, then don't worry about it. No, I'm good. Thank you. Sorry, that was housekeeping. So what you do in GitHub is you would create a new repository, and we're going to call this lovable to high level through N8N. And I'm going to create this as a public repository so that you guys have access to this code later on. But what you're able to do is you are able to very easily create and manage information inside of the internet and essentially make it so that there's never an issue with potentially losing your data. GitHub is one of those platforms that I swear to gosh, that if the world is crashing, like Cloudflare has an outage, Facebook is down, and the internet is wonky, GitHub stands strong by itself. It's really, truly impressive. Now, with GitHub, what you're able to do is you're able to upload files to GitHub. So I'm going to go back to my repo that I just created under repositories and go here. And now I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to paste that data inside of that file, and I'm going to call it N8N scenario for Supabase to high level .json. I'm going to commit those changes. And what I'm doing when I'm committing the changes is a really important thing for you to pay attention to. So GitHub seed vault, committing changes, putting seeds in the vault. You can remove seeds from the vault, but there's always copies of seeds left over in the vault. right? So no matter what, if you check out your code or you remove your code from the system, that code will always exist inside of GitHub. Now watch this. I'm going to go ahead and edit this, right? So I'm going to call this Supabase Upsert info. And I'm going to commit this change. And what it says is commit message, commit directly to the main branch, commit changes. And then I now have a history right here, right? So you can see this was my initial upload. This was my secondary change. And the commits that I push to GitHub can't be deleted. You see there's no delete icon over here, right? So you can't delete commits from GitHub. Now you can roll back and there are ways to kind of finesse the system and things like that, but it's really designed to be an immutable backup system for your code base. So GitHub is really, really important that you pay close attention to. GitHub doesn't host your code. GitHub just stores your code. So GitHub is designed to be able to manage and maintain your code base in an affordable, it's free, in an affordable and basically perpetual storage, like immutable backup system. GitHub can't be corrupted because there's no way to actually delete the old code. So it's not like something where if your code gets hacked and they delete all of your code, that they delete it from GitHub. It's very hard to delete things from GitHub, especially if you have the right permissions set on your system. But I can now go back into that file and I can actually see the changes. So this is called a diff, DIFF. And I can actually see the changes inside of my system so that I know that someone added the word info and that line was changed. Now I can put comments on here. I can ask questions. I can do all sorts of things. And your AI is going to do a lot of this for you. But that's really the purpose behind, that's really how you document something like this and store it between here and GitHub. So does everyone understand that so far? I want to see if there are any questions that we have. So I'm going to poll the audience and see, does anyone have any questions about how the GitHub and Drawio relationship works when it comes to storing your code base and planning out your code? Now I can actually go into GitHub and I can go into GitHub and I can go back into my code and I can add a file and I'm going to upload a file, choose a file from my directories, go to downloads and upload that Drawio file and just hit commit changes. So the relationship between Supabase and GitHub, there really isn't one. Supabase is a database that is transient in nature. So you can store information, you can update information, all of that stuff. The purpose with GitHub is to store your code, like the hard code, so the seeds, not the fruit. So the fruit storage happens inside of Supabase, inside of Dropbox or Amazon S3, the tree storage, something like that. Um, Eric, that's probably associated with your browser settings and a Chrome extension that's screwing it up. That's usually what happens. The other cool thing about GitHub is that it actually supports Mermaid Chart. And yes, Supabase comes in when it comes to any data that's uploaded to Lovable or other AI websites. That's absolutely correct. Supabase is a data storage platform for a variety of information. What other questions? Go ahead and raise your hand. I want to see if anyone has any questions that we can answer live. Let me look at the Q&A function here. Jonathan Peck said, I scared him when the video opened. Sorry about that, buddy. Is it possible to save without committing to the main branch, like a draft mode? Yes, absolutely. So that's called a branching strategy. So what you do is you have these branches over here, right? So you have different branches. And so I can click on my branches And inside of my branches, I can create a new branch and call this branch draft branch. And I can create that branch. And that draft branch I can now switch to, and inside of that draft branch, I can actually make edits to the code without committing to the main branch. And then if I verify that that code works properly, so I verify everything's working appropriately, then I can pull request that information into the main branch. And when I pull the information into the main branch, it's actually going to compare the code for conflicts and any other issues. You can have multiple branches, so you can have branches for all sorts of different things, different people, different code spaces, different development efforts, all kinds of things. And then ultimately you pull request, which is what's that pull request up here in the top center. You pull request that branch into the main branch of GitHub. So what we've done so far is we started inside of Draw.io. We've created some different drawings about our process. We documented our process and we stored that documentation as well as the information for N8N inside of GitHub. Um, how do you compare the code is working when it's not a lovable website? That would be a little bit more of an advanced topic. Phil, I'm happy to cover that in one of our next sessions, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to spin up a local environment on Monday if I'm not flying. We are going to spin up a local environment of N8N and some code, and we're going to do some comparison and more work with GitHub. So I prepared you with some N8N training last week. I prepared you with some GitHub training, some Draw.io training. We did PRDs, we did documentation, we've done lovable building, and we're going to tie all of that together next week. So that concludes my period of instruction for today. A little bit shorter today, just because I am traveling. So a little bit shorter today. But does anyone have any other questions? So we have a question from Chris Chase. Can you talk about going to GitHub to Vercel and then how you would stage it on Vercel so you could test it before you push it to production? So, Chris, when you push it to GitHub and then you connect your GitHub to Vercel, so you're actually going to connect your GitHub to Vercel. Vercel is going to read your GitHub repositories and allow you to push a staging site to Vercel. As long as you don't connect your domains, then it's not going to be live. And if you're testing it on Vercel, that's the wrong place to test it. You'd be testing it in your local environment as opposed to testing it in Vercel. So you compile and build it inside of your local environment. And then once you are good, you'd either commit those changes to the main branch or you'd run a pull branching strategy and pull that code base into your main and then publish it to Vercel. That's actually something that we are going to cover next week. So just stay tuned for that one, and we'll get to that here shortly. I appreciate everyone who attended today. We're just past 40 minutes on the hour. So thank you so much, and I will see you guys all here shortly.